Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have a first line battle for a load of Anthony Trollope books. Back in October 2020, towards the end of Victober, we had a rather large donation of banana boxes brought to the charity shop. They contained every single one of Anthony Trollope's novels in Folio Society editions. I went directly to my manager and the person who sorted the books at the time, and I asked whether I could purchase them. I had been reading Anthony Trollope that month for Victober, and it felt like the perfect end. I actually remember sending a photo and messaging Kate Howe and asking her whether she thought it was a good idea. I feel like we both agreed this opportunity was never going to come my way again. I spoke to my manager, we agreed a payment plan for Folio Society editions are notoriously expensive. And I came home with these banana boxes of 47 books of Anthony Trollope's, and I came up with this idea that I could read one book every month, and that did not happen. I've read a number of the Barsetshire Chronicles, I've read Harry Heathcote, Brown, Jones and Robinson, and The Way We Live Now, which was a buddy read with Emily of Novell Novels. This year I decided I wanted to at least hit 10 books by Anthony Trollope read. Last month I considered doing a try chapter tag, but I felt like that might take too much of my time and I was very reticent about it. But earlier this week I saw Lauren of Lauren and the Books do her first line battle between all of her yellow books, and I thought, there's a good idea for the Anthony Trollope books, because I need to read 2 between now and September to continue this goal of reading 4 this year. And I thought this would be a very good way to pick at least one book. What we're going to do is I've picked 10 books randomly from my shelves, mostly based on things that I've heard Katie from Books and Things say about these books in the past. I'm going to read the first line from each of them, and whichever one is still here at the end will be the one that I read next. Without further ado, we're going to begin with a book that I pulled off my shelf not really knowing anything about. As I say, I don't know anything about any of these books, but this one in particular I don't think I've heard others talk about. It is The Golden Lion of Gran-pere. Up among the Vosges Mountains in Lorraine, but just outside the old half-German province of Alsace, about 30 miles distant from the new and thoroughly French baths of Plombières, there lies the village of Gran-pere. So we've got a French novel by Anthony Trollope. It's currently winning, even if I did butcher some French pronunciation there. So the next we're going to move along to is The Vicar of Bullhampton. I've heard good things about this and I'm looking forward to reading this one, even though I didn't know much about that one before. One thing I like about these Folio Society editions as well is the font size. They've made it very good. The only issue is how heavy they get. I am disposed to believe that no novel reader in England has seen the little town of Bullhampton in Wiltshire, except such novel readers as live there, and those others very few in number who visit it perhaps 4 times a year for the purposes of trade and who are known as commercial gentlemen. Okay, so immediately I have that longing to read it because it begins with that voice that I think is very Victorian of addressing the reader directly, and immediately pulls me into that whole sensation. So that's beating The Golden Lion of Gran-pere, which I guessed would happen. Next we have The Belton Estate. I picked this one because I was looking back at a TBR from years ago and I included this book and I never thought that I had mentioned it, so this has probably been on a TBR the longest. Mrs Amedross, the wife of Bernard Amedross, Esquire of Belton Castle, and mother of Charles and Clara Amedross, died when those children were only 8 and 6 years old, thereby subjecting them to the greatest misfortune which children born in that sphere of life can be made to suffer. Ooh. See, I find them both similar. That one is intriguing. Do I go based off intrigue though? Just because of how I'm feeling today, I think the Vicar of Bullhampton still gets it. But I am interested to know what these children in the Belton Estate have suffered. Then we have Mr Scarborough's family. I haven't heard anything about this book before, so it was on the bottom shelf. Any of the books on the bottom shelf, I don't really look at that often because they're often hidden behind things. It will be necessary, for the purpose of my story, that I shall go back more than once from the point at which it begins, so that I may explain, with the least amount of awkwardness, the things as they occurred which led up to the incidents that I am about to tell. And I may as well say that these first 4 chapters of the book, though they may be thought to be the most interesting of them all by those who look to incidents for their interest in a tale, are in this way only preliminary. It addresses me directly. Still the Vicar of Bullhampton. I'm just intrigued. I'm intrigued by that book. But next, we have the Claverings. And years ago, quite a few people, but one in particular, were campaigning for me to read this as my next Trollope. The gardens of Clavering Park were removed some 300 yards from the large, square, sombre-looking stone mansion which was the country house of Sir Hugh Clavering, the 11th baronet of that name. And in these gardens, which had but little beauty to recommend them, I will introduce my readers to 2 of the personages with whom I wish to make them acquainted in the following story. Ooh. This is a tough one. This is tough. I'm conflicted about this one. I'm going to stick with the Vicar of Bullhampton. It took me a while there to figure this out. I was going to say the Claverings, but as soon as I said it, I was like, no, that's wrong. There's just something, I think, part of me thinks this book is going to be about community, and I feel like that's what I'm leaning towards at the moment. Then we have He Popenjoy, which was another one that I think Katie liked. I would that it were possible so to tell a story that a reader should beforehand know every detail of it up to a certain point, or to be so circumstanced that he might be supposed to know. Ooh. Oh, I like that. I don't like it as much as the Vicar of Bullhampton, but it's doing that similar thing and I like that. Then we have Cousin Henry. A slim volume that I didn't really know much about. I have a conscience, my dear, on this matter, said an old gentleman to a young lady as the 2 were sitting in the breakfast parlour of a country house which looked down from the cliffs over the sea on the coast of Carmarthenshire. Right, so I like it that he started with dialogue. It looks like it's going to be rather slim. I'm like, is Trollope becoming a modernist? But no, it's still the Vicar. I don't know why. This book is just looking at me and I'm like, yeah, me and you, we're going to get on. If we don't, someone's getting beatings. Then we have the Bertrams, and another book that I'm sure someone's recommended to before, but also I took it from my shelf because one of my favourite Christies is at Bertram's Hotel. So I thought, the Bertrams. This is undoubtedly the age of humanity, as far at least as England is concerned. Ooh. Ooh. What are you trying to say, Trollope? The Vicar's still got it, but my goodness. That's intriguing to me. What is Trollope getting at? Then we'll go for Ralph the Heir, because I know that Katie read this earlier this year, or last year now. But Katie read this and I remember watching her review and being interested in this. There are men who cannot communicate themselves to others, as there are also men who not only can do so, but cannot do otherwise. There are men who cannot communicate... Okay. I mean, to me, it's no Vicar. I think that the Vicar's won it at this point because the last book is An Eye for an Eye, another book that Katie read earlier this year, or late last year. And I remember watching her talk about this. Chapter 1, Scroop Manor. Some years ago, it matters not how many, the old Earl of Scroop lived at Scroop Manor in Dorsetshire. Right, good for him. The Vicar got it. I kind of knew as soon as I opened this book, which really I should have just called it the first book, I kind of knew that I was going to have a lesser opinion of all the other books based on this book. Just, I read it, that first sentence, and it felt like I was being spoken to directly, and it immediately evoked the feeling of reading a Victorian novel when I was younger. And the part of the old curiosity shop that I enjoy is the first few chapters before Dickens goes off into the third person, because I just feel like there's something about the first person narrator in Dickens that moves into the third person that I particularly like. I like the idea of this narrator being entirely separate from the novel and then everything happening really in the third person, but it's the storyteller bringing you along for the ride, and that's the sensation I got with the beginning of this. So shall we read a bit more? I am disposed to believe that no novel reader in England has seen the little town of Bullhampton in Wiltshire, except such novel readers as live there, and those others, very few in number, who visit it perhaps 4 times a year for the purposes of trade, and who are known as commercial gentlemen. Bullhampton is 17 miles from Salisbury, 11 from Marlborough, 9 from Westbury, 7 from Heytesbury, and 5 from the nearest railroad station, which is called Bullhampton Road and lies on the line from Salisbury to Yeovil. It is not quite on Salisbury Plain, but probably was so once when Salisbury Plain was wider than it is now. Whether it should be called a small town or a large village I cannot say. It has no mayor and no market, but it has a fair. There rages a feud in Bullhampton touching this want of a market, as there are certain Bullhamptonites who aver that the charter giving all rights of a market to Bullhampton does exist, and that at one period in its history the market existed also, for a year or two. But the 3 bakers and 2 butchers are opposed to change, and the patriots of the place, though they declaim on the matter over their evening pipes and gin and water, have not enough of matutinal? Goodness me, Trollope, zeal to carry out their purpose. Bullhampton is situated on a little river which meanders through the chalky ground and has a quiet, slow, dreamy prettiness of its own. A mile above the town, for we will call it a town, the stream divides itself into many streamlets, and there is a district called the Watermeads in which bridges are more frequent than trustworthy, in which there are hundreds of little sluice gates for regulating the irrigation, and a growth of grass which is a source of much anxiety and considerable trouble to the farmers. You might not like that introduction, but I like it, and I will probably pick another one out of here to read. And shall we pick our second whilst we're here? I won't go through this whole rigmarole. Because I had such a struggle to choose between these 2 books, I decided that the second book that I'm hoping to read by the end of September is The Claverings. So hopefully by the end of September I will have read The Claverings by Anthony Trollope and The Vicar of Bullhampton. Oh gosh, it's just like All Stars 4, we've got a double win. Which will be Trinity? Which will be Monet? Come back in September to find out. Although I'll also be reading a Trollope in October as well for Victober. My goodness, as I've said before, I am a total Trollope for Trollope. If you would have chosen differently, then please feel free to let me know where you would have gone in the comments. Alternatively, have you read any of these books before? Which ones do you recommend I go to after these 2? Or maybe I should prioritise others over these 2. Feel free to let me know that as well. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.